Alright, welcome to episode 67 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode then, we had a few things occur, just generally around the world, just normal sort of basic things that happen. China invaded North China, we saw a war happen in the Middle East, and Italy invaded Switzerland. Just some normal stuff that happens like every single episode. So it's completely fine, and apart from that, there's one other small thing, which was... yeah, the Polish joined the Diamond Alliance, and then, of course, got together with the rest of the alliance and invaded Russia, starting World War One. So yeah, that did occur, and in today's episode, we're going to be covering more of World War One and what happens in that. So this should be pretty interesting, and I would like to start it. However, I'm going to stop myself from doing that and talk about power rankings, because I made top 20 power rankings, as I do in every major war thing. I did this in the 7 Years' War. And we've got the same thing here. The first, top 10 are completely the same. They haven't changed since the last episode. However, the top 11, nope, top 20, there's an entire other bit here. So number 11 goes to the Netherlands. Number 12 is southern India. Number 13 is southern Spain, which is pink Spain. Sorry. And number 14 is northern Spain. Number 15 goes to the Carthaginians. Number 16 is the Italians. 17th is Hungary. 18th is Indochina. Yeah, I love their borders. 19 is Astrakhan, which is red country, and 20th is the Irish military dictatorship. They're not that strong. They are, but they don't have many cool looking colonies apart from Madagascar, and they haven't really done anything. But they do have a load of land that's pretty valuable because it used to be part of the old Irish Empire. So as you can see, quite a few cities. So yeah, that's cool. And anyway, we're going to get on with the war, I suppose. So let's start it off. At the end of the last episode, we had Russian refugees trying to escape through here, then the Polish blowing up Norwegian military vessels that were saving those refugees. So it all went pretty badly, and the Russians are currently just being absolutely invaded by both of these guys. I also have a naval layer. I'm not sure how important navies are going to be in this. Not as important as in the other war, because many of the countries are currently participating in the war in areas like Western Europe. But there's some things, and then lots of these guys are in the Balkans, where it doesn't really matter. But oh well. So let's start off the video, and let's go down to the Balkans first. By the Balkans I mean Southern Europe, because the Italians were not prepared to be fighting here. Of course they kind of knew, oh look, we're going to go to war at this point, but they weren't fully prepared. They didn't have all their military on, well they were on all that, but you know what I mean. They weren't fully prepared to be invaded by the Hungarians, and although on paper Italy is stronger than Hungary, yeah, the Hungarians were a lot more prepared, and they make a pretty good invasion into the eastern sort of Veneto regions of Italy, taking over 3 major cities and a 4th one, until the Italians hold them back, using rivers as a natural border. In the south, however, the Italians fare a lot worse. There's lots of mountains down here, but that doesn't really mean anything, as Turkish troops move across the border, and yeah, they just go past all the mountains. They don't have planes yet, because only in 1897, and even at the end of World War One, they didn't use the planes that much, except for reconnaissance. So the Turks move around more of the less populated areas, kind of in the mountains, and yeah, they just take over quite a few cities, moving up the Italian peninsula. So that's pretty bad. Any other fronts we need to worry about? Well, there's one in Russia, there's this one, and then there's also the one down here in Libya. The Italians really didn't enforce Libya very well, and the other important thing about Libya is that to go and send stuff to help Libya, they have to go down here. And the unfortunate thing is that the Turks control southern Italy, and they also control eastern Libya, so the Italians are having a really, really horrible time supplying their colony. Speaking of Italians having a horrible time, we do also need to update the naval layer, because as you can see, the Turks are gaining naval dominance all over the Bay of Naples, and also, into the Tyrrhenian Sea over here near these islands. So this is really bad. And meanwhile, in the Adriatic, the Hungarians having a similar sort of thing. They occupy this area more because the Turks more about defending stuff, and they're moving up into the Adriatic, so that's pretty good for them at least. However, down here in Libya, then the Turks, as I said before, are having quite a lot of success, as the Italians are failing to push them back. This area is pretty good because you can just push through here and separate off all these other cities from the Libyan country. Also, I realized Libya would be really, really religiously diverse, so Libya looks horrible. Also, the capital of the North African religion is apparently there, but they might move that. Anyway, let's continue on the war. So they continue to move into this northern area, taking over more cities. Maybe they put the capital, and Tripoli is over here. but they probably put it over there. So it's not currently collapsed yet. There's no invasions going on in the south, except maybe down here, because they're protecting this city. However, the Italians are just completely falling apart. It's mostly native forces that are defending the country, rather than like Italian soldiers. But you know, they're trying. Anyway, we can go back up to the Russian front, because the Russians are having a really horrible time here too. Most of the Polish troops are fighting here, although they are going to have to send some back to fight up against the Norwegian Navy. That's more naval officers who need to go over there, so they're kind of alright, just absolutely obliterating Russia. They move around north of the capital city, and it's kind of showing what's going to happen to the capital city in not very long, because next up we need to look at the Ukrainian invasion, and they continue on moving into the south until they get into a very fierce battle up here near the Russian capital, taking the city eventually. It results in a lot of losses on both sides, as the Russians have a lot of people living there. But it's not really the end of it, because the Russians have, in a way, like 3 capital cities, so they're kind of okay at the moment. But it's not great. These areas, they need to kind of get around here, take the Volga River, that's important, and the old capital, Uralios, here I do believe. To be honest, I'm not sure, but I think it was there. Or it's down here. Somewhere over here. Anyway, that's like their core territory, as you can see by the provinces being extremely small over here. Anyway, the Ukrainians continue to move on, and they just generally push up and try to take over some major roads or railways or something like that. So yeah, the war in Russia is going badly for the Russians. Anyway, we can now go over to the colonial theatre, because, you know, colonies are also important here, and the Turks and the Norwegians are currently going to be fighting down here in the Horn of Africa. Once again, the Norwegians are having a pretty horrible time trying to supply this colony, so after a while of fighting, the Turks make a landing in Eritrea, move on into Djibouti, and then continue to invade into Somaliland. Once again, mostly native people who are fighting for the Norwegians here. The capital of the Norwegian colony would be up here in the old capital of the Ethiopian country, and there's also a load of highlands over here, so it's going to be kind of hard to fully invade this colony, but they'll try. The Turks will definitely try. They're not sending that to many forces because it definitely isn't a priority of theirs, but it would be nice to get, you know. The only front where the Turks are actually losing is down here in Southeast Asia, as the British and the Norwegians are fighting up against the colony in Sumatra. I forgot how to talk there for a second. And the British move across the Strait of Malacca, taking all 4 of these cities, and then continuing on into the eastern coast of the island of Sumatra. It is pretty treacherous terrain in Sumatra, but I don't actually care. So unfortunately for the Turks, the Norwegians and the British do a pretty good job at taking over a lot of this land, getting quite a few cities until a lot of this southern territory surrenders. They tried to invade this city over here, but it's made it into some sort of fortressy sort of thing, so that goes badly. I can't click on that stupid dot. There we go, and now it's just a load of guerrilla fighters in this territory. So that's nice. The Turks haven't colonized Australia, and that is all of the other colonies of these countries, apart from up here in Canada. As I said before multiple times in this series, the Norwegians really don't, the Polish really don't care about their Canadian colony. If you look at the naval layer, lots of this stuff is already being controlled by the Norwegians, and after not too long, the Norwegians will easily push their navy in right up on the border of the Polish colony, getting complete naval dominance. The Polish haven't really sent any ships to defend this colony. It wasn't made by Polish people, so they just don't really care. That's kind of a shame, but you know, the Norwegians would like to get this. So they send some forces in, and they land up here in this northern area before moving down into the southern peninsula. They also send some forces around here. I don't remember what this river's called, but it's something. They take this city over here, and they gain complete control of the northern side of this colony, like Nova Scotia. Is that what this is? I believe so. They land on the southern area and move in and taking this city. I think there's actually a city called Liverpool. No, it's Halifax. Halifax is over here. Anyway, Liverpool's also in Britain, but don't worry. Anyway, they continue to move on and down in this other area until there's only 2 cities remaining. How the troops here, who are mostly German people who want to protect, or German heritage people. They're not German anymore. They're whatever this place is called. But if you look at culture, just for some reason, I'm just going to look at culture for a second. That's what I was looking for. I mean, culture families. You can see that all of this is the same sort of family, even though this is German colony. You know, the same sort of people. Anyway, back with the war. So that's going badly for the Polish there, but they don't care. We can also, speaking of the naval layer, look at other Norwegian things happening, as the Norwegians will move their navy out now to try and fight up against the Polish navy, moving it into whatever this sea is called. Oh, the Baltic Sea. There we go. Silly me. They move around to the very neutral Finnish island of Ireland towards the Polish Navy. So the Polish are also going to send out most of their ships to go fight up here. There's no reason sending them anywhere else. And they begin a naval battle here in the middle of the Baltic Sea, in which the Norwegians are successful in winning. They do have more people fighting overseas, so it does mean they do lose some territory or naval territory in the south. But ultimately, the Norwegians appear to be winning in this war, also because they're kind of harrying Polish vessels over here in the east, west, from their holdings in Denmark. So yeah, they're kind of attacking the Polish from two different directions, which is bad for the Polish. Anyway, speaking of bad for countries, we have another country joining the war, and it's going to be Astrakhan. That's kind of why I put them on that list before. So yeah, they will join the war. This is kind of because the Ukrainians go, you know what, you've been invading a lot of people. You literally joined us invading Caucasia. You could easily take the Volga territories. I think you literally already have. Wait, did they? Oh no, they invaded this bit. That was part of the Donbass country. I could not remember. But yeah, these guys move up north of their border and take quite a few of the cities that are bordering the Uralic nation. However, Uralia isn't just going to sit there and accept this, because they are significantly stronger than Astrakhan. So what they're going to do is invade in some of these eastern areas, or northern areas of the country, taking over 3 of these major cities and trying to push down and separate the country into 2. Unfortunately, they don't care about this territory, and this is the only bit that really matters. So yeah, that's annoying. But they did still do a pretty good job at taking territory here. Whilst the Astrakhan country moves up into this territory, they don't manage to progress even further into the Volga River area. However, you know, they're kind of doing something. The Ukrainians will also take over more of this territory in the central area, getting really close to lots of Russian cities right around here. So that's nice. Then we're going to start to try and move eastwards and just try and take out more important centers. There's probably a lot of cities in Russia. I'm not sure there should be this many. Also, it's a really strange looking front line. The Polish are going to make a separate endeavor to try and separate Russian. If you look on the naval layer, you can see the Russians have all of their navy over here in this area in the White Sea and whatever's up here. And that's because they are receiving supplies from the Norwegians, who are sending things right around here to the Russians, and the Polish want to stop Russia being able to get supplies because they're not hugely great at supplying for themselves. The land they have isn't extremely fertile, so the Polish make a mission to invade up into the White Sea and fully capture all the Russian ports. There's like one. This is this world's Arkhangelsk, which I think in real life is down here, but I don't care. So the Polish move up to the White Sea territory, how the Russians divert a load of troops from further in the south to protect these territories because they like being able to get food. Yeah, it's pretty good for you. So the Polish take over this peninsula, but they don't manage to stop the Russian ships, and they don't get any of their own out into this territory. It does come at a cost for the Russians, however, as Ukrainian troops move into the southern territory and take over a lot more cities. So there's that. We can carry on with the colonial fronts for a second, as the British will now fully capitulate Turkish Sumatra. So that's done, and we don't have to worry about that front anymore. However, there's another front we don't have to worry about anymore, and it's the one in Libya, because the Turks have now fully taken out all the cities in its territory, and the rest of it capitulates over to the Turkish. So, you know, wars, like when they take over a territory or capitulate a country, they do a separate peace treaty. Like World War I, when the Bulgarians looked different during the war to how they did at the end of the war. Stuff like that. So, theoretically, the Turkish colony looks like that now. But I'm not going to change that on the map. Anyway, yeah, we can go back to the Italians, actually, because they're still getting invaded, and it's getting even worse now, because they're really having a strong time getting supplies from the rest of their allies. The problem is, they don't border any of their allies, they only border enemies. If the French were in the war, then it would be a lot, if the French were actually just in the alliance, it would be a lot easier, because they're not in the alliance anymore. So these guys are having troubles going through the Alsace country, or sending supplies straight to France, or all the way down to the Strait of Gibraltar, and it's making it harder to actually supply the Italian country. It's not super difficult, and they're relatively self-sufficient. Like, north is pretty fertile land, they've got a lot of farmers, but lots of the farmers are fighting on the front lines, defending their country, so that's a problem. The Turkish send out another military division to take over the island of Sardinia, and unfortunately for the Italians, they can't really spare any forces to protect the island, so the entire thing falls. However, Corsica isn't taken. They also move up towards the capital city, getting to the central region. How the Italians have a really impressive counteroffensive, pushing back all the I was going to say warriors, not warriors, soldiers in this region. So that's pretty nice. Unfortunately, however, the Hungarians are still invading, and they're going to try and push around and remove all these Italian troops from the area who just push back the Turks and fully take control over the Adriatic Sea. And they do pretty well at that. They don't fully manage it. How they start to move into more of these just eastern areas of the Italian country. The Austrian Swiss areas aren't invaded because it doesn't really matter. And yeah, now both countries are moving towards the Italian capital near Pisa. This is bad if you're Italian. And the Turks also take over this bit. So it's really, really bad if you're Italian. Navally, there's not a whole lot that you can't just surmise for yourself. Damn it, what did I do? I was on the wrong layer. So the Hungarians fully take over the naval territory over here, and as for the Turks, they will fully take over most of the Tyrrhenian Sea, really, and they start to get up on the naval borders of Corsica, so that's bad, because the Italians kind of like keeping Corsica. But yeah, they probably won't. So that's worrying. The Italians also have lost all their naval stuff here in Libya, obviously, and the Turks kind of just send out some navy to occupy those waters. Ethiopia, I'm just not even going to bother with because there's no point really. How the Turks have taken naval control over the northern part of that territory. The Turks are now encountering some problems in this territory as they continue to move in. Yeah, there's just some guerrilla warfare now. The Norwegian military are actually sending people mostly from Java to go fight, which is helpful. And now they're getting to the highland areas and deserty bits. It's becoming pretty hard to invade into this colony, so a bit of a standstill there at the moment. Back up to Russia then, we can see the Astrakhan country has repelled all the Russian forces from their territory, and they're now making a full border invasion into the Russian state. That's bad, really bad if you're Russian. They're moving up towards the Volga River as well, and into some of the central, sparsely inhabited territory, or mostly just villages territory, as they now try to move over to the Ukrainians in the north. The Ukrainians in the north actually tried to move over to their territory. I'm talking too fast. Anyway, so they are moving around some of these cities, and they're getting pretty close to some of the more important areas of the Uralic country. Actually, these are the most important areas, but the ones that are left. And finally, the Astrakhan country completes a full encirclement of this territory, and the Ukrainians and the Astrakhan nation work together to completely capitulate the Volga River territory. The Russians, with Norwegian support, however, do manage to push back the Polish up in the north, taking this territory from them, and also defeating some of the Ukrainians who are fighting in these areas. So that's nice, but you are still losing quite a lot. So yeah, you know, it's what it is, I suppose. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. The Norwegians fully capitulate that. Don't worry about that. It's gone. And now we can return to Italy because more bad things are happening to the Italians. First of all, they've lost the island of Corsica. Give me a second. What was that? That was a dice story. They lose this territory, and now they continue to move on towards the Italian capital, taking over lots of these outer suburb sort of cities, whilst the Hungarians make a split, just random glory sort of seeking thing, and invade into Austria and Switzerland. Don't know, just thought it'd be fun. There's a huge battle that occurs near Pisa, of course, and the Turks eventually win it, taking over the city and moving into some of these sort of like Savoy-looking regions of Italy. So this is really, really bad if you're Italian. I'm going to lower the brush size because for some reason it's 35. But yeah, the Turks continue to move on into these territories. It's pretty mountainous around here. Monaco's like over there, I think. But yeah, I don't know why that was relevant because it really wasn't. And they now start to move up onto the border of France, which is probably scaring the French quite significantly. Meanwhile, the Hungarians move in through the north, and finally they will fully capitulate the nation of Italy. So goodbye Italy. They are out of the war now, and Hungarian and Turkish troops can now be diverted to go fight up in Russia. Speaking of fighting in up places, that was a really bad segue. The Norwegians are still beating back the Polish navy as they actually start to get really close to the Polish and entirely navally surround the nation, moving towards some of these islands over here. And it looks like the Polish could really be in need of some help. Unfortunately, it's really hard to get ships around here. I mean, there's some rivers. Like this river goes over here somewhere. So they can get some ships from Ukraine, because Ukraine isn't using any of their vessels for like anything, except maybe fighting the Volga River. So that will be like a sort of beneficial thing. And they managed to save some of these islands and save some stuff in the Gulf of Finland. However, they need a new ally, and luckily there is one who's willing to fight the Norwegians, and that is of course the nation of Sweden. So Swedish troops will start to move into Norwegian territory, and they start to move around here in the east, moving to what would be Oslo. Luckily the Norwegians have their capital quite a long way away, but the Norwegians very much caught off guard by this invasion. The Swedes don't really send any naval stuff out because, like, what are they going to really send out? They try. However, the Norwegian navy is far stronger than the Swedish navy, and they push them back all the way over here near Gothenburg and Malmo. Don't know why I pronounced it like that. Don't know. They also take over the island of whatever this is called, friggin' Gotland. There we go, and start to get naval advantage all the way around Stockholm. That's pretty bad. The Swedish are now incredibly isolated, and they realize they've made a huge mistake as the Norwegians push back in all of this territory. However, the Norwegians are also being pushed back in other areas, which is near the Polish. That's where they are pushed back all along the southern territory, and the Polish finally managed to connect up with the Swedish and push back out of the Norwegian navy in this region. So yeah, it's kind of bad. The Norwegians are now surrounded on this island, Gotland. That's what it's called, not Gotland. You know what I mean. Anyway, oh god. Anyways, they will take over the island, and their navy's just like controlling that, but it's not going great because of the fact that Norway is now being invaded by Sweden. They can't really help as much with the Russians, and unfortunately, without the support of the Norwegians and with nobody really wanting to fight on this front, the Polish will be victorious over here. And in terms of naval stuff, we can just there's nobody's going to occupy those waters anymore. So yeah, the Polish have won up in the north. Oh, what did I do? Nothing, I suppose. That's good. Yeah, so the Polish have won up there, whilst the Ukrainians are continuing to also invade into this territory, taking over more Russian cities. Russia's starting to go into a sort of collapse at this point. Pretty bad. Various military dictators are rising up and going, we should do something for our country, blah, 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 blah. And morale is extremely low in this alliance as Astrakhan troops move in and get very close to what I'm pretty sure was the old capital of Euralia. It should be that city, I think. Unless I'm wrong, which I might be. Anyway, we need to head over to the west because something really, really big just happened in this war, and that is that the French just joined the war. And not only did the French join the war, but the Germans have also. So we see French troops pouring into the territory which has been occupied in Italy. This is very, very bad if you're Turkish. They take over one major city from the Hungarians, who have a much weaker defense in this region, and also another two from the Turkish. So yeah, the French are actually starting to do something. This is bad. The Germans, of course, also do a similar sort of thing, but they're not going to invade in through the Alps. What they're going to do is invade into Poland. Of course, Germany's invading Poland, but the Germans in this series don't like the Polish, so some things stay constant to real life. But they're now invading into Kashubia, or Danzig, I don't know, and also around towards Kaliningrad territory. This is going to really help the Norwegians, which was kind of the aim of the Germans in this war, as they move in towards some of these cities around here and really start to threaten the Polish capital. They also take over this city, and the final thing that will occur in this episode is that Oman will join the war. Now, Oman is a country who recently got invaded by the Turks, and they're going to try and invade the Turks again. Actually, no, they invaded the Turks. They didn't get invaded. They did the invading. So they start a re-invasion of the Turkish nation, taking over some of these cities, and yeah, we'll see how this affects the Turks in the next episode. But it might cause something kind of crazy. I guess we'll just have to see. Norwegian troops from Java are also helping out here, and of course British troops. I already mentioned the British troops, but they are all around fighting these fronts. It's just that Britain doesn't really have any fronts where they border in these countries because they're like super far in Western Europe. But there you go. Thank you for watching today's episode. I know it was a bit of a long one, 24 minutes or something, so that's pretty long. But yeah, I will see you again next time, and have a nice rest of your day.